All right, here we go. Coffee with the founder. Today we're here with Reverend Doctor, a good friend, a good colleague, just someone I know I can call in the middle of the night if I need anything. And I'm so glad to have you here. And this is an opportunity to introduce to folks the people who've really been a part of the White Privilege Conference community, but not just the workshops and the keynotes, but what you actually do, what your work is all about. So imagine if I meet you in a hotel lobby, we're riding up to the 35th floor, whatever, of the hotel, and I ask you, who are you? Who's Jaime Washington? How would you describe, how do you tell people, introduce yourself to people when they ask, who are you, what do you do?
That's good, Eddie. And the first thing I want to do is say thank you for this opportunity. It's just good to be together, right, and connected in this way. And, you know, all of us, and we're sending out love and healing and greetings and warmth and grace and mercy and everything to all of us who are listening and checking in this spirit of, you know, kind of social distancing and sheltering in place and all of those things. So not seeing a whole lot of people on elevators right now. And so this is a space in which I might get to share some of that. So most of the time, again, one of my biggest things is context, right? So context before content, right? And so whenever anyone would be asking me that, I would be thinking about what's the context in which I am operating at the moment. And so at my core, my essence, my purpose, I believe, as I live on the planet at this time, is to be a healer, right? And so I serve to help heal the planet and help people to find their way back to their divine goodness. With that, I happen to be able to do that in many different venues. And so in the context of higher education and working with businesses and organizations, I get to serve as a consultant and leadership development expert around culture change, and that we do that through the lens of social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly through the lenses of race and gender, sexualities. And the intention in those spaces is to help folks. I believe that that racism, sexism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism, all of those are examples, are the results of us not being present in our divine goodness, right? And so that I work to help ameliorate those dynamics within organizations, within individuals, and that the hope is, as we begin to see how we've been socialized and trained and how we show up in ways that have us not be honoring our own full humanity and dishonoring others' humanity, that will make the planet better. So in the work setting, if you would, that's how I get to do that. And so working with college leaders, business leaders, but my primary audience is higher education, because that's where I grew up and that's where I found my healing. But I also do that work outside of higher education. And so as you named earlier, that I get to serve as a pastor. And so in many ways, there's lots of crossover. So people will refer to me as I was the past president of the American College Personnel Association. And before I went into the presidency, folks referred to me as the pastor of the profession, right? And so the role of pastor, again, which is that of support and healing and encouragement and sometimes challenge, sometimes prophetic engagement and naming of things, is what I feel like I also do in my work in higher education and businesses, but specifically in my church as a pastor and elder in the Unity Fellowship Church movement, I get to serve in that way as well. So everything that comes with pastoring, that's all that I get to do. And being an elder in a denomination, I get to do and be a part of all of those kinds of things as well.
Yeah, that's a full plate,
yes.
Including dessert.
And then none of that did I say anything about being a parent and grandparent and partner, right, and brother and patriarch in the family. And so all of those pieces are ways in which I believe that I show up in the world to help us heal the planet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's really helpful. I got a couple of things I was going to ask you about, following that up with, when you talk about healing, I think sometimes that's a word that's thrown around like diversity, or when people talk about self-care, again, it's a word that people can pronounce very easily, but the results of that, I don't know. But for you, when you think about healing or self-care, I wonder what does that mean? How do you talk to people about that when you say I'm really about healing the planet, but even like the space and place that you occupy, making it a better place to provide healing, to help people take care of themselves? Because I'm not sure people all have a good understanding of what that even means.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, Eddie, and I think that the 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 challenge around even understanding what healing means is it requires us to do some quiet reflection around ourselves, and being able to get clear about when we're showing up in the world and with others. Um, so when I say when we're showing up in the world with ourselves and with others in ways that don't serve our highest good, right? In ways that don't reflect the value of each other, and sometimes we are aware of that. Oftentimes we are not, and so I believe that, as a colleague said many years ago, any expression other than love is a cry for help. And if I'm showing up in a way that is other than loving with people, I'm actually showing up in some hurt, out of some hurt place, that I may not be aware of, but it's a way that I protected myself. And so I felt like I need to show up with more, making myself better than that person. I need to show up making myself seen. I don't feel heard. And so there are all kinds of ways that folks need healing. And when I can be in the presence of you, celebrate your goodness and mine, and not need to be jealous of your goodness or pull you down, or I can show up with you, seeing that your world experience is different than mine. So I want to listen and understand, because your humanity matters as much as my humanity matters. And I'm not going to diminish my humanity to put yours up, but I am going to look at where's our common ground so that we can both, kind of coexist, co-live, co-thrive in our humanity. So healing for me is a place, self-care, as you name that, of really being able, and I think that this opportunity that we're right now, to really just be present with ourselves, to ask ourselves the good questions. And, as I said, I think that this time is a space where some folks are struggling because they have to be with themselves. They have distracted themselves from their need to heal because they had to go to work, because they had to take the kids to soccer, because they had to fix dinner, because they had to pass to the church, because they had to run the conference. They can distract themselves from all the ways in which they are wounded or got wounded, and therefore show up in the world in ways that, again, does not serve their highest good, nor, and when it's not serving your highest good, it really isn't serving the highest good of the world. Again, that's my belief, that we are all here on purpose, and that we all have such a contribution to make, and that we have an opportunity to do that as whole people. But as I said earlier, racism, sexism, classism, capitalism, and all of the other isms have gotten in the way of our being able to show up whole. And so we distract ourselves with busyness. And this time has called us to slow down. And some of us are struggling because we don't know what to do with the slowdown, especially when we don't have a lot of people around to talk to. Got to be with us.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm going to come back to some of that, but you made me think about systemically, institutionally. I mean, primarily America. I mean, I agree and am trying to grapple with this myself. Like this, I mean, slow motion. I mean, I literally have gone from bullet train to snail's pace. And I want to come back to just kind of how folks are doing, how folks are handling that from your own reflection. But I think also I wonder about our nation. Like there has been, and some conversations, some questions about, has the work of diversity and inclusion had any positive effects on our society? And I think we were so busy doing so much work around diversity and inclusion, I don't know if we ever kind of like stopped and gave the nation an examination. Well, by golly, we got a pause in our nation, and we have a pandemic that can give us a sense of how we deal with that, maybe can give us an answer to how our work has had an impact on society. And if I had to give it a grade, I don't know if that grade would be very high based on how we've dealt with this time as a structural systemic design. And so I'm wondering, as you look at what's going on in America, I mean, what's your sense of all the work we've been doing the last 25 years and where we are as a nation now, and what's ahead of us as we've had a pretty rude awakening, I think, around particularly an area of healthcare and well-being, that there seems to be some looming large disparities. And I'm wondering what that says about the work ahead of us. So what are some of your thoughts around that?
Well, you know, again, I think that, you know, there's lots of opportunities that, you know, we will get to raise the question, what about, right? To have all of this called into question. And I think that this is an opportunity that, again, is hitting the US in a particular way. And not that this is not impacting other countries, but it's new to us, right? To have this kind of national impact, right? In this generation, in our lifetime, right? And so when there are, you know, situations, then whether it be a Katrina, whether it be, you know, a snowstorm, a heavy snowstorm in a particular area, those are opportunities, if one would, to begin to look at who's differentially impacted, you know, in spaces, and how, you know, we show up, and who has, again, access, and who is all right and who is not all right in spaces, and so on. And so this moment has given us an opportunity to invite a race lens to how we're navigating COVID-19. We can add a gendered lens, we can add a class lens, we can add a sexual orientation and a gender identity lens to look at, you know, how we're engaging. And what I would say is that as I thought about the first couple of weeks of this experience, I was very much aware that given my social and economic status, even with the cancellation of work and so on and so forth, that I am experiencing the impact of this differently than some of my church members, right? Who work hourly, whose offices are closed, and that and then we look at the disproportionate number of those are women and minoritized folks of color, and so we begin to see who would be struggling more in these kind of spaces, and how is what is happening now reflective of their overall experience outside of this context, right? We also get to look at, does their experiences come to bear as we invite solutions or responses, right? So are our responses geared to a middle class, predominantly white, cis, heterosexual Is there someone, are there people at the tables, are there people in these meetings who are making the decisions that are saying, well, what about and how about and how about this area, and so on and so forth. And I am finding at week 4, as I'm seeing more and more the impact of COVID-19 on minoritized populations, right? So I'm seeing like 4 or 5 different webinars last week pop up around what the health disparities and the impact on the Black community, right? And the Latinx community, and the impact of COVID-19 on queer students and queer young people, and so on and so forth. So I'm having that at this week 4 or 5 that folks are beginning to say, now we need to talk about those who we've not been talking about. And what I'm experiencing is that lots of that is coming from those minoritized populations. And so I began to wonder if those folks if from our minoritized identities we weren't shining the light, would the light be shined, right? And what I have not heard enough of yet is how people are responding to the light being shined, right? And so, it's just like on our campuses when minoritized students raise an issue or a concern, that light being shined can be received with, wow, how did we miss that? Or it can be received with resistance, pushback, and all kinds of other deflecting and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm paying attention to now as we think about the impact, as we are noticing the impact and the differential impact of responses and experiences around COVID-19. How as the light is shined on folks who are often not seen, particularly by those who are in that group, how's that being received? And what's the response to that, and so on. Yeah. And again, in terms of what that means for our future, again, as I said, so much of what we're learning in this space will get carried into whatever the next normal is, right? Whatever the new normal is. And it'll be interesting to see how we take the learnings from the disparities into that space with more clarity.
Yeah. I feel like healthcare is an area where you can get a sense what lives are more valuable.
Yep, that's right.
In response. Yep. And yep. So it just feels like to me, when I think about white supremacy, white privilege, and other forms of oppression as it relates to what's happening now, that some lives seem to be more valuable. And I do think that we need to be talking about the impact on minoritized, people of color communities. But what seems to be absent is the ideology, the belief, the disconnection of those in power. And I'm not saying the presidency, I'm not saying just those we see on TV, I'm saying just possibly everyday people that could be, should be possibly responding differently or giving differently, serving differently. But maybe I'm missing something, I don't know. But I'm wondering, like, of the, how do you see white supremacy, white privilege, oppression playing out during this time as you look at what's unfolding right before our eyes?
Right, and so again, I go back to that as we use the lens of race and we talk about white supremacy and white privilege and white culture, that the dynamics again of who's at the table to make any decisions, right? And then whose voice is getting heard at the table on top of that, right? And so if I don't have in front of me thinking about, how this is going to impact the students in school in inner cities, right? Who may have this access or may not have that access, or parents who may have this or may have that. But that's not on my screen, right? And so that's an example of the whose lives matter. And often, with absent of relationship and absent of, again, the real work to look at my own ideology and who I'm seeing in times of crisis. I tell folks, and I've been saying this the whole time, this is going to be a moment for us to get to really see, right, where the unconscious and implicit bias stuff is, right? Microaggressions are going to show up in macro ways, very real in this time, because when crisis happens, we hunker down and move into survival of the fittest. And because of white supremacy, that has positioned minoritized folks by race in a struggle place. Now, the trick is, or the power of this is that minoritized folks, particularly by race and class, are survivors. And so even when the system isn't set up and prepared to see them and take care of them, we find a way, right? And do the best that we can. And so while it may take longer, it may not look as good, it may not look as smooth or as easy, that the communities of minoritized folks will show up in ways that what do I want to say? That may not, in fact, reflect the real damage that's being done, right? So we figure it out, and so whether that is about feeding people, or whether that is about getting people places, or whether that is about getting materials to folks, we will often figure it out because we've always had to. So I think that white supremacy, white privilege, whiteness continues to show up in all the ways that it does. And, again, what I do say is, you talked about the evaluation of, so has our work mattered over these past 25 years or 30 years or 40 years and the years before that, because we know our work stands on the shoulders of those who went before us. Has this mattered? And I would say absolutely, because just like 30 and 40 years ago, there were white folks who get it, right? And who felt like it was wrong. And some of that may have been then from a moral place and a humanity place. I think that today, because of the work of White Privilege Conference and the work that folks who are connected to this ideology have done, white folks are able to, there are more white folks who are able to name this shit as it's showing up, right? And many of them are.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to come back because I was talking about self-care and individual versus institution, just to ask you, because I'm assuming just, growing up in a church and also knowing being on the circuit as a speaker and having a family, all that kind of stuff, it's just heavy. There can be a lot on your shoulders. So I'm wondering how you're exercising self-care, and what are you hearing from your constituents, your parishioners? What's the need of the people right now in reference to how they're doing at this time?
Well, thank you. That's so good, Eddie, because week one, there were needs that were different than week two, than week 3 and 4. Now that, and as we come through, we just had our 5th virtual service, right? So it's been 5 weeks that we have not come together physically in church, right? And so each of them at the time, right? So week one, yeah, oh, this is cool, fine, fun, you know. Oh, this is, okay, this is a week three, you know, because this, you know, where's all the toilet paper? The children's getting, I don't know how to take care of these, you know. So an extended spring break or vacation or whatever, that's good. But now we're at week 5, and with no certainty around what's coming next. And so, you know, folks are hoping for the end of April and maybe into the middle of May that we might, you know, begin to see some different things. But I think that the longer that we're in, the more attention we need to pay to what's the needs of this moment. And so what I'm finding now is that my folks are, you know, they done straightened up the house. You know, they've cleaned out the drawers. You know, they have watched everything they really want to watch on Netflix, right? And so, if you're not real, you know, television or movie kind of people, you know, after a few, you know, weeks of that, then it's like, you know, if I would rather be out and running around and hanging out and talking with friends and so on and so forth, if that's how I spend my time, and I really average, you know, 4 to 5 hours of television a week, that's my kind of television thing. You know, by now it's done. It's just like, it's done, right? And so folks are moving into, you know, kind of now what, and boredom and anxiety that's showing up around that. And I think, so that's one of the pieces that folks are feeling like, I've run out of things to do. So there is a need right now for folks to be able to be encouraged with ideas, right? And encouragement of, you know, so how might I spend my time, and how do I get in community? And, you know, for those of us who are, you know, kind of working from home and really continuing to be in meetings and check-ins and so on, folks are zoomed out, right? So that we're experiencing a great deal of Zoom and webinar fatigue. And this kind of engagement takes a different kind of energy. You know, I can be in all-day meetings, 3 and 4 for 3 or 4 days of a week. And part of, I can be tired, but the energy that I get from moving through the hall or seeing people at the water cooler, or, you know, getting on the elevator or moving by the Starbucks and seeing faces, that energy shows up differently, right? It feeds in a different way. This, while people are glad to be able to at least see some faces and have some conversations, this energy can be draining, right? The whole sitting at the computer or being at the computer and so on and so forth. So being able to get out, to exercise, to take walks. I was on a spiritual meditation call last week, and I had gotten into part of what I wanted to do during this time is get back into my exercise routine. And so I was trying to schedule, you know, all right, so now you get up and you go and you do your walking, and, you know, all right. And so then once that was done, right, so it's like, okay, so now what? And so I had found it really important. What was offered at that space was go for a walk, but don't exercise. Don't do it for the exercise purpose, right? So take a slow walk. I was like, wow. And just go for a walk, right? Because even my walking had become purposeful in that I couldn't just walk around the block and see and breathe the air and notice the trees and the grass and the, you know, and everything out there. I had to be doing something, right? And so I think that part of what folks are having to get comfortable with is just being, right? And at week 5, once you realize that you've busied your life with things. Now I really do have to just be. And can I just be okay sitting in silence? Can I be okay just reading a book if that's my thing? Can I be okay? Because I know that for some folks even those of us who enjoy television. I really enjoy. There's just not enough hours in the day for me to see everything I want to see. The energy of feeling like you're wasting time, that whole dynamic that you are not being productive is what's up at this point. And so the not feeling like I know what to do or have something to do is, so giving people permission to not do anything and not judge themselves for not doing anything is a part of what's present right now. But the other major piece that I did want to get in, and I got this in a meditation as I was doing some walking last week, was what we are not talking about is the grieving and the loss that folks are feeling right now. So it is a huge deal that I'm not going to get to graduate in the way that I had planned graduation. I'm not going to get hooded in the way that I thought that was going to happen. I'm not going to have my senior dance, my senior prom, my spring break trip for the last time. I am having a major birthday during this shut-in time, so if you got a major birthday at 21, 25, 30, that 40, that 50, that 60th, that 70th birthday. And I have worked and planned everybody else's birthday. Last year was my sister's, and the year before that was my nephew's, and now mine isn't going to happen, right, in the same way. And so my wedding, my family vacation, and while we might figure out ways to do that, it's not going to be done in the way that I had envisioned and dreamed and imagined. And folks have not been allowed to grieve around that the expectation is that you be grateful that you're alive, that you're not impacted. There are people who are dying. There are healthcare workers who have to be out there every day. And so folks are expected to just kind of get over it without the space to be really sad and disappointed, at some levels mad and angry around it. And so actually in my sermon last Sunday, I talked about the importance of your grieving process. The loss of this white privilege conference, right? Not a small deal. And we're not talking about just financial. We're talking about the community, the work, the energy. What happens is that coming together with the people every year and what that does for us in terms of our ability to stay in the work and not having any space to, kind of grieve that, and people just expecting you to kind of make a decision, make a call, and it is what it is, and just keep moving. It's not realistic. So again, healing doesn't take place, and harm is done. And so I've been paying attention to letting people be mad that they can't have their birthday party, and not make them wrong for what feels like a minor thing. You are all upset over not having a birthday party. You all, go and be mad because that mattered. And if you can't have that space, then you really can't move through it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So,
Rev, I feel like I can't ask this of too many people because I don't know where they are foundationally in their pastoring comprehensively, inclusively. But I know this Black man, and I've always appreciated the openness of your fellowship, your worship, your leadership as a pastor. And I just feel like, and I'm going to ask you just in whatever way you can, to just give those who are watching right now, listening right now, just some kind of message, some kind of reflection, some kind of prayer, however it's received for them. Because I just feel like people need some of that from trusted, inclusive pastors and leaders. And so whatever is bubbling or comes to you at this moment, I just ask you to just take a minute or two just to offer that to anybody who's willing to receive it. And if it's just Jenny and I that's what I'm asking of you right now, if you can.
Mhm. Well, and again, appreciating that and knowing that one of the things that I've been very clear about since the beginning is that in times like these, we need grounding, right? And so whatever grounds us, whatever helps us to find hope, right? Hope's a real thing, and possibility, that does not have us spin in despair, right? And and so there are many moments in our lives where we will find this sense of, I don't know what to do. I've done all I can. I can't control this. And so I think that one of the major challenges for human beings is, control is an illusion. We feel like that we can control so much. And we try to control everything from our feelings to our responses. And while we do get to make some decisions about how we respond and so on, that this whole notion of control is one that is a part of the human challenge, right? And so, yes, we get some say in things, but this need for control has us not sometimes ground ourselves in the truth that we don't control everything. And so to begin to allow ourselves to surrender to whatever we surrender to, right? So, because, beyond our mind knowing, beyond our financial knowing, beyond our social connection knowing, after all of that has been exhausted, then there's still this thing, right? My mom is still sick. My house is still going to be in this space. And so, yes, that privilege gives us more opportunities to be able to respond to lots of those things. And sometimes that privilege is financial and social capital. Sometimes the privilege is to allow yourself to get clear about where you ground and where do you go when you don't understand, right? And how do you find peace, if you would, in the unknown, peace in the mystery, peace in the undetermined or undecided, and just rest there, right? A few weeks ago, I spoke about, after you've done all you can, just stand, right? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm social distancing. I'm wearing masks. I'm wearing gloves. I'm washing my hands. I'm not going into physical spaces. I'm paying attention to my own health and the health of those who are around me. I'm only doing the essentials, so that we can, minimize the spread of, kind of the virus. So I've done all that I can. And I still don't know. As you named at the beginning, we still don't know. There's not a vaccine. There's not a cure. We don't know actually how people are actually doing. So what do I do with unknown? And how do I exist in that space? And how do I exist in that space in a way that is healthy for me, not in a way that spins me down into despair? That, anxiety is a real thing. Depression is a real thing. And there are folks who are diagnosed with those things that we want to offer support and prayer, and whether it's however we take care of ourselves in those spaces. Sometimes it's medication, sometimes it's therapy, we just wish that for folks, right? But anxieties and depressions and lack of hope can come up for all of us in this space. And so what I do is I remember the blessings, right? I'm just remembering, how good things are, right? And continue to send energy to those who are experiencing challenges, right? But I show up with an attitude of gratitude every single day. That's where I get grounded. I get grounded in gratitude. I get grounded in appreciation. I get grounded in that slow walk of, oh, look the sun. Oh, look the trees. Oh, look the grass. I'm grounded these days. My dog, I have a little Jack Russell Terrier, follows me around all the time. But 3 weeks ago, I realized he comes to church with us now every Sunday because we're doing the virtual service from our home. And so right as service starts, he comes and sits right down in the middle of service. And so I find myself grounded in his being in the space. So for some folks, that's children. Others is just noticing the funny things your pet does, or in some of your cleaning. So one of the things that I found during my cleanup portion of this experience is my grandmother's funeral program. And so I just had some time with grandma, right? Just reviewing, looking at her obituary again, finding things that I hadn't looked at in a while. I found when I was in RA pictures, right? Now, some of that is about hoarding and things that one might need to get rid of, but it was just this wonderful moment of what a journey, right, that I've been on, to be able to reflect and to remember where I came from. Who was I as that 21-year-old RA in that picture, right? Who were those people? Am I able to recall their names? And what does that mean? And what, all of those are opportunities. And so allow yourself to just pay attention to what's around you and let yourself get grounded.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you to close out with something you're watching. I mean, as a way to share with our audience, we've been asking people, is there anything you've been watching that you've learned something from?
Sure.
Or anything that's just like total take you away? Just
well, I got all of it.
Okay.
If anyone has ever been heard my bio or seen me introduced it, anything that I've spoken at, you'll know that one of my things is binge watching. When you could binge watch stuff, 5 or 10 years ago when that came into being, it just set me in a place, right? And so I can't watch anything on television unless there's at least 5 episodes, right? Because I need to be able to see, I need to get saturated so then I can stop, right?
All right. Well, we got the right person to give us some good stuff. What are some of your top?
Exactly. Well, so we do movies and series, right? Some movies and some series, right? So we got Netflix and got Amazon Prime and Hulu, right? Kind of going on for us right now.
Yeah.
So the other night I just watched Just Mercy, and I was, that was hours of conversation, and just gone with the story around the false incarceration, and so Jamie Foxx and Michael
B.
In that, just were phenomenal. The storyline was great. So that's one of the movies that I've watched. But in terms of my sister had been telling me to watch The Haves and the Have-Nots, and I was like, I ain't got no time to watch that. And but again, I was cleaning up and I put it on. Well, I got hooked. It's a soap opera, right? And so I grew up, as I think about being an RA, I used to record All My Children, Days of Our Lives, all that kind of stuff. I was caught up in soap opera life, right? And it just took me away. So I got caught up in the drama of the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. So I got to season 5. So that's good. Now I'm watching All American. And that's a powerful storyline as well. On Netflix. Every night I watch Murder, She Wrote. Every night. That just takes me to sleep. So I get into that. I'm a big comedy. So whatever the new Netflix comedy person is that shows up and that pops up on the screen, I look at the trailer and see if I'm going to enjoy that. So those are the kinds of things. So I look at, the other thing is that I've been binge watching one of my favorite mentors and colleagues in progressive ministry, Bishop Yvette Flunder. And so I just go on YouTube. I Google her, pull up her sermons, and just have been binge watching her sermons. And so there's all different kinds of things. So from that, and I've learned so much in that space, to, just nothing TV, right? And then to meaningful movies on all those spaces. So that's what I'm doing. And I have a lot of fun doing it. So
yeah. Well, I want to give y'all 2 because I know y'all. So yes. You may have seen these. If you haven't, I strongly recommend. But I'm warning you, once you start, you're not done. You're not finished. You're not going to go to sleep till it's done. Okay?
Okay.
So number 1, Hulu, is this new one with Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington.
Yes, Little Flyers.
Yes. Have y'all seen that?
I couldn't stop until I got to the 3rd episode.
Well, I tell you. Okay, great. All right, good. So y'all on that.
Yeah, so I'm ready for the next parts.
I'm waiting on it tonight. That's tonight, Wednesday, tonight. Yeah. I feel like a soap opera kid too. So this one I learned from Kevin Jennings from Netflix is called Unorthodox.
Huh.
So I think y'all would like that. I'm gonna leave it there. Kevin Jennings turned me on to it. I watching him, following him on Twitter. And we got hooked and we had to finish it that night. It is, I'm going to stop it there and leave that with you. And let me.
Okay. Unorthodox. I love it. I love it. Thanks.
Listen, we appreciate your time and all that you've done to support me, the conference, and my work. And I'm looking forward to the next 25 years of being in partnership and collaboration.
That's right. Absolutely, my friend. And thank you so much for this opportunity, for this conversation. Again, as we talk about healing, as we talk about how we take care of ourselves, this is a very grounding moment for me, right? So being with a brother who I love and respect, who for many, many years, who's in the Word, who's just reaching out in this way. And so I feel really grounded. My day is good. And I wish you the best. Give my love to that wonderful family of yours. And you all take care until next time.
All right. Till next time. Take care.
All right, bro. Take care. Love you too.